Much. I'm happy to be here. And thank you to Jackie and the organizing team for doing such a wonderful job. My name is Anand. I am a clinical professor at the Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. And I'm really excited to be here. I've been working on blockchain since about 2016. And since 2019, I have been teaching about blockchain. So I really feel having the literacy about blockchain, having the literacy about finance, and the literacy about financial technologies are going to be key in making blockchain truly successful for us. So let's look at us. So, you all know this by now. What is blockchain? But I thought, for the sake of completion, I should do this. These are the things that make blockchain important for me, even when I was in business and now when I'm in academia. The fact that no single person or entity owns it. Meta doesn't own it. Amazon doesn't own it. Google doesn't own it. We all own it. Now, by the way, this is not true for every blockchain that everybody can own it, but in general, more than one party can own it, and that becomes very important. It's immutable. Once something has happened on the blockchain, it cannot be changed, or it's very difficult to change, or the cost to change it is much higher than any benefit anyone would get. So we can rest assured that this is not going to change. As I said, no single party owns it, but all the parties that participate in the blockchain agree with the state of the blockchain, agree with the data on the blockchain. So that means it is a shared source of data that they can all use. Anybody can see all the data in the blockchain. They can see it, doesn't mean they can make meaning of it. They can see it, they might not know who it belongs to and who are the parties transacting. And that's where the last piece of blockchain becomes important, is that we use cryptography to make sure the privacy of all parties is protected. The parties themselves decide who they will allow to see the data. So these become the real core foundational aspects of blockchain that make it extremely useful, make its applications extremely disruptive, and help us create new business models. Let's go further. So, what does it mean to have a distributed ledger or decentralized ledger? Whenever you interact with a bank, the bank holds all the transactions. It has the transactions it has with all its clients. You can maintain the set of transactions or the set of actions that you're doing with the bank on your own, but you would just have your transactions that you're maintaining. And if there was a conflict between the transactions you were maintaining and the bank was maintaining, the bank won. Okay. And you had no other transactions. With a decentralized ledger, you would have the transactions of everybody. Okay. Now, you would only be able to know who the other parties are if they've allowed you to see it, but you would have all the data and you could know that what you have is correct. What you have is up to date. And it isn't up to the bank to tell you, no, 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 what you have is not correct. So that's what makes decentralized ledgers or distributed ledgers really, really powerful. Okay. So when we use blockchain, when my interest in blockchain comes from the business impact that it can have. So these are what I call economic inefficiencies in our economic system, global economic system today, that existing technology doesn't solve, but blockchain has the potential to solve. And I kind of put these in some buckets. And the thing that I like the most is what I call the three R's of economic inefficiency. One is redundancy. There are a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of companies doing the same work over and over again. With a blockchain, we can do that work one time and all can benefit. Imagine the productivity we can get when, like let's say a company generates a purchase order. They generate the purchase order, they send it to another company, they send it electronically, but the company does the work of making sure that the purchase order fits into that system, and that is redundant work. So imagine if all the work in the world is done only once. That's like a huge productivity. I almost feel like that's a 100x productivity we could get and see what that could do for our economy. Now, because we have redundant work, because we all do the same work again, we make mistakes. So when we make mistakes and we find the mistakes, we have to fix the mistakes. So that's the second R. We do rework. And by the way, that's another productivity lost. So if we are all doing the work only one time, well, there is no mistake. We're all not making different mistakes. And there's another whole amount of productivity that we've unlocked. And the third R is reconciliation. Well, when we don't find our mistake and time passes, and then party A is talking to party B and their stuff doesn't match, well, I thought you owe me $1 million. And the other party says, no, I think I only owe you $500,000. Who is correct? They have to go through a process of reconciliation to figure out what is the correct amount that they owe each other. With blockchain, that goes away. Okay, so that's the third R and the huge productivity we've unlocked and made that into our economy. And by the way, the other stuff is pretty much accepted now that because we have blockchain and because we have privacy and we don't need any intermediaries, and by the way, the role intermediaries are playing is just creating trust among the parties. Now, if we all have the same data, if the data is protected, if the data is correct, if the data has got privacy in it, then we don't need those third parties to create trust. The blockchain creates trust for us. So that means we don't have to pay fees to the third parties. And because no third parties are involved, transactions can settle a lot quicker. They might not settle immediately, they might settle in 2 hours, but they definitely won't take 3 days to settle. They won't take, and some healthcare transactions, they take over 6 months to settle. So that won't happen. And that unlocks a lot of capital that sits idle when a transaction isn't settled. Finally, the way blockchain works, it actually takes away regulatory constraints. Okay. We Because we are taking all these parties away and we are simplifying things, the opportunities for fraud go down. We no longer have to give up our privacy to participate in our financial system. I mean, when I go open a bank account, they want to know my passport, my social security number, when my daughters were born, which hospital. I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but that's how much privacy I give up just to participate in the economic system. And in turn, what do these entities do with the data I give them? They have security breaches. They lose my data. They give it to bad people. So now I don't have to deal with that because my privacy is protected. So I feel these are the reasons that we should be using blockchain and we should be building business applications using blockchain. Notice, nowhere did I say that we should be using blockchain because it's going to go from $10 to $10,000. See, I didn't say that because I will never say that. My purpose is getting business to be more productive. Okay. So this is the concept where not only do we have the transaction ledgers, everybody has the same ledgers, but we've used consensus to make sure that these ledgers are the same. And by the way, the process of adding new data to the blockchain, you can call that adding a new block or adding a new record. That process is called consensus. And in our language, we can also call it mining. So we mine, we create a new block. Okay. And different blockchains use different methods to add new blocks. Bitcoin, for example, uses a method that we call proof of work, and it is computationally very expensive. And the more computationally expensive the consensus method is, the higher the chance that the blockchain is immutable. Okay. So there isn't a free lunch here. Okay. All the computation you spend has a purpose. Okay. So let me just tell you the story as to how this happened. I'll try to go really quickly with it. But this didn't happen overnight, and this will kind of help us get to where we are going. And more importantly, I want to get there and then tell you what we're doing at the University of Maryland, because I want you to get excited about what we're doing at the University of Maryland. I want you to collaborate with us. I want you to join us. And, because we can do more stuff together than we can do alone. Okay, so let's just tell the story first. Okay, so Bitcoin, and in my mind, the Bitcoin blockchain is the most distributed and the most decentralized. That means more parties are involved, more geographies are involved. It is very hard for anybody to mess with it. Okay. So we call that it's decentralized architecturally. Okay. That means, hey, there's no way it can go down. It is decentralized logically. It means no one can go and hack part of a of Bitcoin system. And it is decentralized politically. That means there isn't a group of parties that can collude, that can get together and say, oh, we're just going to mess with it. Well, it's just going to be very difficult. They can, theoretically, they can, but in practical terms, it would be so difficult. It would cost them so much money that it's just not worth doing it. Okay. So that's kind of where we all started. And in my mind, when you evaluate any blockchain implementation, you have to see how distributed is it, how decentralized it is, and what is the consensus algorithm. Okay. That will tell you how secure it's going to be. That's going to tell you how scalable maybe it's not going to be. But that is the evaluation that you have to go through in order to participate in a blockchain network. So in 2008, it was really the end of 2008 that Satoshi Nakamoto released this white paper. The first transaction happened in January of 2009, which is January 3rd of 2009. And, we got going. But things don't really heat up until much later. Okay. Uh, Vitalik Buterin, who was kind of, looking at all this world, part of all this world, felt that Bitcoin was great, but it was limited because you could just do transactions on Bitcoin. You could send Bitcoins from one party to another. You could put conditions on that transfer. You could put, or we would call them terms on that transfer, but that's really all you could do. And Vitalik felt you could do more. So Vitalik introduced this notion of smart contracts that were extremely programmable, and he simplified some of the things that made Bitcoin harder to use. And in some sense, what Ethereum did in 2014 was launch this wave of applications. People could now do useful things. They could just not send Bitcoin from one party to another, but they could do a lot more useful things. They could do banking, they could do trading, they could do supply chain, they could do healthcare, they could do all kinds of things that I was alluding to before, which we couldn't really do with Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin, I think, is the most secure, the most decentralized, the most distributed. So we had to give up some of that to do all this exciting stuff. Okay. And then in 2017, with IBM introducing Hyperledger Fabric, what they did was they said, how about we get kind of the best of both worlds? Because companies don't want everybody to have access to everything. They want to control who has access, but they want to give people all the data. They don't want to control everything. They just want to control who has it. And then they want to give it to them. So they introduced Hyperledger Fabric, which, by the way, now is open source with the Linux Foundation. And Hyperledger is now a big environment, but Fabric was the original blockchain, and that started being used by companies like Walmart and Maersk. And by the way, the application that Maersk built eventually did not pan out, but we learned a lot from what they did, and now we have successor applications that are doing a lot better. And firms like JP Morgan, they didn't really use Fabric. They used a variant of Ethereum, but they all got started once they realized it doesn't have to be as distributed and as decentralized as Bitcoin is. I can do something which benefits me and all the companies in my ecosystem and all the customers in my ecosystem, but I can unlock that productivity gain. I can unlock that, I can reduce the settlement time. I can make sure we are now more secure than we were before. So that kind of became the goal. And this is where I focus on. So I really focus on enterprise blockchain. And then if we are doing enterprise blockchain, then what becomes important is how do you govern it? Who makes the decisions? How do we make the decisions? How are things distributed? And that's very important for me. Okay. So now Ethereum was taking off, people were building applications. But again, some of the limitations of blockchain led to it being harder. So in 2022, Ethereum changes its consensus algorithm. It goes to a consensus algorithm called proof of stake, which reduces how distributed it is, okay, and decentralized. Okay, sorry, my handwriting's not that good, especially when I'm writing, when I'm talking. Okay, but what it did was because proof of stake was less computationally expensive, Ethereum now uses 99.95% less energy than it used to. Okay. So that's a good thing. So we made the trade-off. We said, okay, you know what? We will use less energy. We will lose some amount of decentralization as long as we are making that decision intentionally. And for the use cases and for the applications we are going to use, that's okay. This is worth the trade-off. Now, that was an important kind of decision that we made. And by the way, this took many years for Ethereum to do. So you can see that, Ethereum really kind of starts taking off in around 2018. And it's not until 2022 that they make this change. Okay. What has happened since 2024 is what I call institutional adoption, which is the enterprise blockchain. Okay. My feeling is, and this is kind of, I don't know if I always thought this way, but what I'm seeing is we might not get the utopia that I was thinking about, where, everybody has access to everything and we are just going to eliminate the middleman. Maybe that's not going to happen. But the middlemen the intermediaries are going to adopt blockchain. They are going to unlock the productivity and they will have no choice but to pass the savings on to us. Well, that's kind of what I'm counting on. Now, I've been wrong in the past where these companies sometimes just take the savings and just make more profit. But I feel like our system will get enough competition going where, as some of them, for their competitive advantage, pass the savings to us, others will follow through. And that will kind of lead to betterment for us and, more importantly, better service for us, quicker settlement times for us, and more products for us. And that's kind of what is happening right now. And then the next thing that's happening is we are beginning to see that AI is helping blockchain and blockchain is helping AI. So that's my next area of work is what are all the use cases where blockchain can make AI more responsible. And I'm more focused on how blockchain can help AI, but I think there is also a case where AI can help blockchain as well. So this institutional adoption is happening in what is a field that we are calling real world assets. So now, in a real world asset scenario, what we're taking something that exists in the real world. It could be a company security, it could be it could be jewels, it could be houses, it could be real estate, it could be anything, but we are converting those into tokens. So in some sense, that's the paperwork. Everything we own has some paperwork behind it. Like if we own a car, there's a title to it. That title is maintained somewhere. And that title says you own it. So in some sense, if all of that ownership becomes tokens that we can store on the blockchain, now we can unlock the productivity. We can make it easier to buy and sell those things. We can make it easier. I mean, you can imagine how hard it is to buy and sell houses. But if we can tokenize them, we can do those faster. We can have more creative ways of getting people to buy houses and so on. And that's what is happening. And it's being spearheaded by companies. It's by JP Morgan, by BlackRock. And you can see that the value of the real assets, well, it's only $34 billion right now, which, in our economy is not that much money, but, we got to start somewhere. So that's kind of where things are improving. So I'll just kind of talk you through what JP Morgan is doing. It's got something called Connexus, and it keeps changing the name because they keep trying to find better brand names or something. But they're doing $1 billion a day in what they call repo settlements. So we think of JP Morgan Chase as a US thing, but they're a global thing. And it helps all their subsidiaries, all their clients are global. So by offering blockchain services, now they are unlocking the productivity for their clients. There is this called this is a big thing now, stablecoin. And because we've in the US, we've given it regulatory clarity, this is something that will improve. So in some sense, what happens is when we keep our money in the bank, our money is also a real world asset. So we tokenize it. So we say, okay, $1 in our pocket is worth a USDC stablecoin. But now that it's a token, we can settle it faster. We have to pay less fees. We can go global with it. And now there's regulatory clarity as to what that means. So people can adopt it. So I mean, I don't know if you realize this or not, but when you open a money market account, in some sense, what banks have done is they've taken your money and converted it into something else. So your money is not, it doesn't exist as dollars. You don't realize it. And they maintain the value of that something else equal to $1. And then they pay you interest and they pay you more interest, and they can do more things with it than they could have done if it was a checking account. So the same thing is happening with stablecoins. Now, with stablecoins, what you got to be careful with is who are you going with? How are they maintaining your reserve? So, banks have to maintain reserves. So when you go to a company and get stable coins, how are they maintaining the reserve? And that points to how stable they may or may not be. And I can tell you one thing, if there is any company out there that's telling you they're going to give you a 15% interest rate guaranteed, yeah, something is not right about that. Okay. Uh, So you can kind of see, BlackRock is doing it. This notion of cross-border settlements, that is good. And there was a blockchain called Ripple. There is a blockchain called Ripple that came out with this use case, but there's an existing protocol called Swift, and they are adopting blockchain and just speeding up global transfers. I mean, I'm very happy if I can send money to my family in India and it doesn't take 7 days. I'll be really happy about that. And I know what exchange rate I'm getting when I send the money, not when the money is received. So these are all very, very important from a consumer perspective, important changes and benefits that we can have. Okay. Uh, I come from healthcare. So most of my work originally was in healthcare. And what we want to do in healthcare is make, and this will take probably longer, okay? because again, we're going to have to wait for the current intermediaries like Optum Health, Evernorth Services to make this possible for us. But we would like our patient data in our control, and we give access to people. Uh, there is a lot of work going on in clinical trials where today clinical trials are very expensive to run because of all the documentation that has to be carried and maintained to ensure the integrity of the data that is being presented to the FDA in a clinical trial. If we are able to do this using blockchain, we guarantee that integrity. So we can speed up clinical trials. We might not be able to speed up the part where we are recruiting populations. We can do some improvements there too, but we will make it a lot easier and perhaps a lot cheaper to run these clinical trials. And if we do that, well, then maybe we are benefiting everybody's health. Uh, this was a law that Congress passed called Drug Supply Chain Drug Supply Chain Safety Act, and it came from the opioid epidemic and the fentanyl epidemic that's still going on, and we wanted to be able to trace every drug from the time it was created to the time it went to the patient. And again, a lot of blockchain work happened over here, and they found simpler solutions. But this was quite a impetus because the FDA sponsored this work for us to get blockchain work going and to get improvements to blockchain going. Okay. Uh, Supply chain is huge. Like right now there is a cyclosporus, something like that going on. My wife tells me, and I keep forgetting it. All she tells me, don't eat any lettuce because there's something going on. But what Walmart did was it created end-to-end transparency for all the produce it was getting. And eventually it's extending it to other areas. By the way, JD.com did the same thing with seafood. And what you do is every time you pick up some seafood that is on the JD.com retailer, or if you pick up lettuce from a Walmart store, they know exactly where that lettuce came from. So if you picked up a lettuce and you got diarrhea, which is E. coli, and you complained, they know exactly what lettuce we need to take off. So we don't need to have the scare where the entire country stops eating lettuce, but you can just say, oh, you know what, these stores. Now, by the way, the cyclosporus that's going on right now, they haven't figured out the source. But had they used blockchain, they would have known the source. But right now, I'm prevented from eating lettuce. I'm prevented from eating strawberries. I'm prevented from eating like lots of things. My wife will just tell me, "No, you can't eat them. We don't know. Cyclosporus." And I look at that strawberry. It looks great. It's going to taste great. I know it's going to be sweet, but I can't have it. But if we had put blockchain, I could have eaten it. So, just for my sake and for me eating strawberries, I should be allowed. Okay. So, a lot of stuff in the supply chain going on. And, sometimes this stuff doesn't make headlines like all the quote unquote crypto stuff does. But in my mind, this is the more important and more impactful things that are going on. Okay. We're back to kind of stable coins. We're taking bonds, we're taking real estate, we're taking a whole bunch of illiquid assets and we are tokenizing them. Now, keep in mind, sometimes this creates opportunities for bad actors to do things that are going to hurt us. So whenever you get into these things, do that evaluation I'm telling you. Where does it come from? Who's behind it? How distributed is it? How decentralized is it? What's the consensus mechanism? And I'm telling you, if you don't understand it, don't do it. Okay. That's why my whole mission is to increase literacy so people understand it and they participate in these networks with eyes wide open. Okay. And that's kind of like that's what literacy will do. And it's going to take time and we're just going to keep doing it. But as we do it, more people will get involved. But then they have the knowledge to detect the bad actors. Okay. Oh, so I'm going to get to, if I talked about how Ethereum lets you develop all these really, really, really cool applications. We wrote a book, Veja Zhang and I wrote a book about it. And, you can always get the book. I'm not shilling for that book, but, if you're interested, I use this book for some of my courses. And what the book covers, it covers the blockchain fundamentals. It's the thing that I want people to, you got to understand this before you participate. So we do it in a very kind of, easy to understand way. It also helps you build applications using Solidity. Solidity is the language behind Ethereum that lets you develop these smart contracts. And then we talk to you about, okay, how does decentralized finance works and how does the central bank digital currency works, which, you know, which leads to stable coins and things like that. So we talk about all of these things. And we also talk about, we talk about how we need to be careful of security. Now, I'm very vociferous in saying that the blockchain itself, if it's sufficiently distributed and decentralized, cannot be hacked. But Veja, my co-author, likes to remind me, but Tash, the wallet can be hacked. The wallet can be hacked by phishing. So people need to understand that. And by the way, we use this book in courses at Wage. I used to use it at UT Austin until I left UT Austin. Wage uses it there. I use it at UMD, and we also use it at Columbia University. So we use this book there to kind of, again, get the literacy up. Okay. What are we doing at UMD? A lot of exciting stuff. Okay. Blockchain is really, really, it, 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 it makes me young, because when I work on blockchain, I'm not working with old technologies and I feel like, oh man, if I'm working on this cool technologies, I must be young. I'm not, but it just makes me feel that way. Okay. So we have this thing called the Blockchain Business Accelerator. We have relaunched it where companies that are getting started in this space can go fill out a form, tell us a little bit about yourself. And if you are interested, we will match you with a mentor. We have a network of mentors, and we will match you with a mentor. Jackie is a mentor. We will match you with the mentors, and we will help you get going. In return for that, the University of Maryland is not going to take anything. Now, your mentors and you can come to an agreement as to how much work you want them to do. And if they do work for you, then you got to make sure that they have some stake in it and that you work out with them. Okay. But you get mentoring from the mentors, but you also get mentoring from human B faculty. So it becomes a really good place. Like, oh, I have this idea. I don't know if it'll work. Well, we can at least tell you this is not a good idea for blockchain. Oh, this is a good idea for blockchain only if you do it this way, this way, this way. And this is the problem you're solving. So it helps you get started. Uh, we have mentored several companies, and I'm actually quite proud of these companies because uh, one company has been acquired. One of those companies that came out of the blockchain accelerator didn't come out of the accelerator. They were already working on it and they came into the accelerator. They've been acquired. Two of the companies have gotten $1 million plus funding. And there's some active research publications. So it is, I mean, I feel pretty good about the work we're doing here. And what I like about this is we're doing this the right way. We're unlocking productivity. These are not things that we're just hyping. These are things that are real. Yeah. We have this exec education course. As I tell you, my goal as an educator is to get literacy going. So this is the blockchain business imperative. Again, so you don't have to be technical. You don't have to have degrees in things, but it helps you learn blockchain. Okay. It helps you learn the fundamentals of blockchain so that you are not conned by bad actors. You're not hoodwinked by bad actors. And you go in with your eyes wide open. Okay. So this is kind of the curriculum. We talk about the business motivation for blockchain, nothing I said about the three R's and the settlement time. We give you the foundational technologies. Well, blockchain is not a technology, it's an implementation of technologies. So sometimes it's good to understand a little bit of the technologies because those technologies have limitations and those limitations make their way into the blockchain. Okay. We understand Bitcoin, we understand Ethereum, understand the enterprise applications. So it's, if you don't have an opportunity to go learn blockchain on your own, or if you don't have an opportunity to be in class and learn blockchain, this is one way you can learn blockchain. And I again recommend that you don't participate in any blockchain activity or network until you have some literacy with how blockchain works. Hmm. We also have the blockchain club at UMD. I like to joke that I am the faculty advisor for this blockchain club, uh, but I don't think I can take credit for any of what they do. They have grown tremendously. And when somebody asks me, well, Tej, you're the faculty advisor, what do you do for them? I say, whenever they need a room, they send me an email and I book the room for them. Obviously, this kind of I'm being facetious, but these are students who are becoming literate, who are doing things the right way, who and they are growing. They are growing. They're bringing other people on, and and I have lots of, and as they graduate, they go into companies and do the right things there. So I'm really proud of this group, and I'm really happy that they're growing. They do hackathons. They bring in industry speakers. They get real project experience. They work on these kinds of applications, these enterprise that I'm talking about. And now we have alumni that is across all the place. So in some sense, these blockchain club members and former members are becoming a presence in the US blockchain ecosystem. So really, really happy about this work. And now this is just kind of my, I could be wrong here, but I'm a professor, so I always have to have some view of where we are going with blockchain. There's a lot in the press, but this is my view. So I feel this whole notion of real world asset tokenization is something that is going to take off. It's not going to take off because we want to democratize everything. It's not going to take off because we really feel that's the right thing to do. It's going to take off because companies like BlackRock, Goldman's, JP Morgan, Truist Bank, Bank of America, PNC Bank, these are just, I just listed a few names here, are realizing that there is productivity to be unlocked and they are unlocking the productivity. And they feel that if they don't offer this to their clients, somebody else will. So it's almost like if you don't do it, you're letting someone else disrupt you and you're letting someone else seize the competitive advantage from you, and they don't want to do that. And now I would like them to take the savings they're getting. Now, they're definitely going to improve service, okay? But I would also like them to take the savings that they are getting and pass it on to their clients. Hasn't happened yet, but I think it will happen because of how competition in the US works. Okay. The second thing is the blockchain and AI. I feel like the issues we have with AI is like if I want to find out if Gemini has used this data source, I literally can't. Okay. Now I can try a bunch of things, I can try a bunch of prompts, and then I can guess. Oh, they must know all this. But there is no verifiable way, okay, of knowing what is the infrastructure, what is the data sources, okay, that AI is using. And I believe that for AI to get the kind of adoption that we really, really want, okay, we will need to have an infrastructure that makes autonomous AI trustworthy. And I don't think the world has gotten there yet, but I think it will. We are seeing the beginnings of that, where people are saying, oh, we don't want full autonomy. we're not sure we want to do this. Already all this hype about all these jobs we're going to lose and these jobs are going to disappear and the white collar force is going to go away. That has subsided. People are saying, oh, jobs are going to change. New jobs are going to come up. And by the way, which all points to the fact that people are not comfortable. They don't consider it to be trustworthy yet to do all the things that the companies that are going to make money think you should be doing. And I feel like blockchain will help there. But I still don't think it's going to take all the jobs away. Mhm. And then stable coins is going to continue to be a big thing. Okay. Uh, I find a lot wrong with the current regulatory environment, but at least we have a regulatory environment. I think doing things now, stable coins in my mind, stable coins in my mind become a centralization point that goes to a blockchain. Anytime we have something that is centralized, we need to be regulated so that we are all operating on a set of rules. Now, doesn't mean we agree with all the regulation, but we at least know what the regulations are and we can go in with eyes wide open. That's my mantra. Whatever you do in life, eyes wide open. Understand before you do. That's kind of what I had in mind. I wasn't sure I had an hour, I had 15 minutes. So if I take less time, you have more time for lunch. I don't know if there's a way for me to take questions, but I hope this has been beneficial to you. You have my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. I love it when people reach out to me. And if I don't get back to you right away, give me grace, give me patience. I will. So thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Jackie for having me. And I hope this was beneficial to you all. So, Catherine, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Tej. That was awesome. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.